Okay, so welcome everyone. I know quite a few of you who are in this webinar, which is great to see. I am an associate professor in, right now, the department's called Health Sciences, and I have been at Stetson for 25 years, unless you want to count the 4 years I was an undergraduate here, which are listed on this slide. So I actually got a bachelor's of science in what they had at that time, physical education. I did a lot of work in biology, chemistry, physics. I took 3 semesters of calculus. So I was really a pre-med track, but worked in a hospital for a little bit and did not enjoy working in the hospital and decided I needed to make a change. So I did, and I love teaching. So I completed my degree and I got a Bachelor of Science in Physical Education, left immediately from there and went to the University of Tennessee to study exercise physiology, and was lucky enough to actually study under one of the pioneers in this field, and I'm still connected with him to this day. After I graduated from the University of Tennessee, I actually taught for a couple years to save money to go back and get my doctorate, and went to Auburn, where I studied under another pioneer in the field of exercise physiology. And this was a wonderful background to really launch a career in the area of thinking of exercise as medicine. And so I'll talk a little bit about that today as part of the wellness picture, but Stetson recruited me back to change that physical education department into something that was really more distinctive and progressive thinking. And so I actually consulted a bit to change this physical education program into something similar to a health and human performance. We called it sport and exercise science. And it had sport management and had exercise science in it. And it evolved quite quickly into an integrative health science program and subsequently into health sciences, which is where it is now. I was interviewing a candidate today, and we were talking about anatomy and phys, and I actually realized that I'm the person who brought anatomy and physiology to Stetson. Stetson didn't have an anatomy and physiology class until I got there. And throughout my teaching and even development of the curriculum, because I chaired this department for 14 years, I envisioned a department that really focused more on a wellness model of health rather than a just disease recognition, identification, and some preventative medicine. I thought of it more of as a holistic model of thinking about how to maintain well-being. And so as my students who are in this seminar will know, I actually told them that they didn't need to attend this webinar because they've heard this all before in multiple classes from me when I talk about a wellness model. And so we're here today. We're here to talk about, well, what is a wellness model of health, and what are the dimensions of wellness? And think about that as we move through in the context of possibly what we're seeing going on right now. So this is called what makes you well, as opposed to what makes you die. We were talking right before this webinar, and I taught a first-year seminar class on how not to die, and that was actually what it was called. And we said, we better not call that our how not to die. We'll stick to what makes you well. So if you're not familiar with a wellness model of health, I'm going to give a little description of what that is. First off, health, well-being, wellness, it's not static, it's dynamic, and it changes throughout your life. What was well for you 10 years ago and 10 years from now will be different. And so we have to evolve. We have to think about the wellness model of constantly evolving. And it's evolving around the things that we do each day and the behaviors that we partake in each day. And so when we think about this model, you have to think about this model as this is the way I'm going to continue to think throughout my life. The the wellness model encompasses, it's multidimensional. And so I'll identify each one of these dimensions and give you some examples. But it really focuses more on self-healing, promotion of health rather than thinking about just treatment of disease or illness. It thinks more on how can I be healthy rather than, well, how can I make sure I don't get sick? And it is a preventative model. So it focuses on behaviors that can actually increase your risk for disease. But if you go through it as a wellness model, you'll actually find that it's prevention. It's thinking about the choices you make and how you can make choices that can help reduce your risk of getting certain diseases. All right, I'm going to duck out for 1 second because my computer came unplugged. And that's one way you could lose your moderator. Okay, so I just saw someone raise their hand. If you want to put in the chat box a question, I'll kind of check the chat box and answer questions that way. So here are the 7 dimensions. I like the 7 dimensions. I like a wellness model that has all of these dimensions, and I'm going to tell you why. I've read a lot of books on different health models, and I like this one the best because you can really identify each dimension and you can look for challenges within each one of these dimensions and how to maintain some kind of balance between them. What's interesting is if you walk into our Hollis Center on campus, you will see these dimensions displayed in the lobby. They're actually up on the ceiling, and these dimensions are shown there. And this is a model that actually Mark Hollis believed in, and I actually learned many lessons about wellness from this incredible man who lived this model. So, the next time you should be on campus and you should walk into the Hollis Center, you'll actually see that the Hollis Center was meant to embrace the wellness model of health as well. So these are the dimensions, and I think if you look at the dimensions, you're like, okay, physical dimensions, emotional is really more of a psychological one. Maybe you haven't thought of social dimension as part of your dimensions of wellness. What the heck is intellectual dimension and how does that play a role? A lot of people would think spiritual because they'll think the link between mind, body, and spirit. You may not have given as much thought about occupational and environmental. Certainly both of those are playing a role and giving us challenges in our current situation. So I have in these slides, some descriptions of, very brief descriptions of each one of these dimensions. And it's important to be able to have a definition kind of with each one of these dimensions because it will make you think out of the box a little bit about all those things that contribute or challenge our overall well-being. So with emotional wellness, this would be the mind part. Mind, body, spirit. You've probably heard of that holistic approach before. Well, this incorporates that holistic approach, but gives you some other dimensions to think about. Intellectual wellness was one that not everyone may understand. It actually means to continue to challenge your mind, to maintain open conversations, to be open to learning new concepts, new ideas, and that's really good for our brain and our brain health to continue to challenge. So my mother, who hopefully isn't in here or won't see this recording, I have her playing Words with Friends with me for some time now, and one of the reasons is to help in her intellectual wellness. It is actually, she's always been a big book reader, but she has an iPad and she can do this. So it's good to keep the mind healthy. And that's the intellectual wellness we're talking about. Always open to reading about new things, learning about new things, questioning, things like this. Occupational wellness is one you may not think of as much either. But I will tell you that when you are thinking about all the dimensions of wellness and how to maintain balance within them, sometimes our jobs contribute the most to us being imbalanced. Sometimes we're working a job that we need to have specifically, but we're not happy with that job. We don't necessarily are happy in our work. Maybe that's just a starter job before we move on to a different job. So I've had some of those jobs. I had a kind of interesting, it would help if I plugged the computer in too. I actually had an interesting question on the final exam in anatomy and phys. In order to try and keep the students engaged in their final exam, every time I did a recorded lecture, I would throw out a job that I had had in the past. So one of the extra credit questions on the final exam, if they watched all the recorded lectures, was, which job did Dr. Skelton not have? And as I looked over that list, I had some jobs, some occupations that were there to help get me through school, but they didn't necessarily add anything to my overall well-being. In fact, they detracted from it. And they can detract so much that they can affect you physically. All of these dimensions, an imbalance in any of these dimensions can have real physiological manifestations on your body. And so I had a choice. I either had to balance this occupational negativity at that time, negative energy, with more positive aspects, or I had to leave the job. And I actually made the choice to leave the job and change jobs at that particular time in order to contribute to my overall well-being. So occupational wellness played a role in terms of what we're thinking. I love to teach. I love my students. I'm glad that some of them, my alums, are here. I think they know how much I really enjoy teaching, and so I get a lot of positive energy in my occupational wellness because of how much I love to teach and to give messages such as this, messages that will last a lifetime, not just for the lesson of the day. But, there are also challenges at having a job and deadlines and a lot of grading and sometimes administrators. There's always challenges. And so in thinking of that, you have a give and take within your different dimensions. So you get energy, like positive, good energy towards your wellness model from your job, but it also pulls from that too. And the key is trying to maintain that balance. The key is trying to maintain that balance before it affects you physiologically. Yeah, so I see putting in here, changed jobs a few times in my career due to stress. That is absolutely true. If it's causing you so much stress that you cannot maintain balance, then you might have to make that tough choice of changing jobs. It's just what has to happen. So physical wellness is probably the dimension that most people are familiar with. And we can do a lot in the physical dimension to help create positive wellness that may offset some things that are pulling more energy from us rather than contributing to our overall wellness. Certainly in this pandemic, we've probably seen some issues with social wellness and trying to maintain balance in that. So the stories I have, I'm actually really fine because, we still can connect to friends through all different types of platforms and venues. But I have heard from some of my students how challenging it is to go back and live at home. And that even for parents and students who are having to live together again, some of them, it may be a little disruptive to their social wellness, and they have to find ways to be able to create more harmony within that dimension. So this is what I'm talking about. If you think as a collective that there are generally, you could probably figure out more dimensions than this, but this is a model with 7 dimensions. If you think about these 7 dimensions and how you either gain some positivity from that dimension in some way, you'll also have some of these dimensions that take some energy from you and make you less balanced in terms of the wellness model. So this brings me to thinking about lifestyle diseases, because if you have different dimensions, then your behaviors in those dimensions can actually contribute positively to wellness or negatively. And so our department actually focuses more on lifestyle disease. If I had to say what makes integrative health science and then health science unique is that we focus less on just studying disease and more on studying behaviors that contribute to disease. And that's what lifestyle disease is. It's looking at diseases based on the behaviors that someone exhibits. So if you, in a wellness model, take responsibility for your behaviors and you try and convert some of the negative behaviors into positive ones, or you try to balance them, right? You try and balance those, then you have a way to reduce your risk to illness and try to achieve a true wellness model for health. In thinking about lifestyle diseases, I challenged my health and wellness students recently. I said, well, what if we, instead of putting on a death certificate what disease they died of, what if we put on death certificates, we had a place to be able to talk about, you know, the lifestyle behaviors that contributed to that disease. What would we learn from that as a society? That would be probably quite telling. Quite telling in the way that when someone tells me we have an obesity epidemic, I usually come back and say, no, I don't believe we have an obesity epidemic. I believe we have an epidemic of low activity and poor nutrition. That those are the things that I would say we have an epidemic of. So if you think about lifestyle disease the way we do it now, you can see that, you know, turn the century, in the 1900s, our leading cause of death was infectious disease. Interesting enough, we're back to looking at infectious disease again because of the pandemic. But even within 2013, so this is a chart I had from a previous book. I liked it because it shows the dichotomy here, but heart disease and cancer are really number 1 and number 2, and they continue to be number 1 and number 2 in leading causes of death in the US. So, you know, it's primarily heart disease. Coronary artery disease, it's primarily coronary artery disease. But there has been a year where cancer was ahead of heart disease, but pretty much they always fall 1 and 2. And if you had to break down cancer, lung cancer is the number 1. So really, we've done a good job at starting to look at infectious disease and being able to find ways to reduce our risk, herd immunity, things like this, to reduce our risk of infectious disease. But what we've substituted is substituted some unhealthy lifestyles that have now led to heart disease and cancer being the number 1 and 2 leading causes of death. And so when you're thinking of lifestyle disease, and you did if you actually tracked behaviors, you would find that the percentage of total deaths, the majority of them are due to what we're putting in our body, so our nutrition. Not having a balanced diet with good food choices that are nutrient dense is contributing to predominant disease in our society, with tobacco being second. Okay, so when I said lung cancer is the most common, and it's actually a behaviorally driven disease, we're talking about tobacco use. But look what's number 3, low physical activity. So in terms of lifestyle disease, we have 2 things that we could really start to focus on that could possibly reduce our risk of disease, and that is, well, first off, we just have to stop smoking. But then the next 2 things are looking at nutrition and looking at how we move and how we move for a lifetime. So if if you want some other statistics, this is basically saying that about half of the 2.6 million deaths in the United States are due to some type of lifestyle factor. Again, usually the majority of falling in those 3 categories that we just talked about. If we can decrease tobacco use we would be able to see that one category of lung cancer really start to decrease. But we still have a ways to go when it comes to tobacco use, because it depends on how long someone is smoking and then how long it can take to reverse that. And I do want to tell you, there is evidence of reversibility of disease. So even if you're a smoker, there's evidence of how you can try to reverse some of the ramifications that smoking for a long period of time has had on your body. And it's the same with poor nutrition. With poor nutrition, we can also see that changing our nutrition, making better food choices, nutrient dense, a lot more plant-based, maybe substituting less meat for more plant-based, we can actually reverse some diseases, and there's evidence of this in the research. So unhealthy diet and not moving as much, not exercising as much, really contribute, outside of tobacco use, to the highest number of deaths. And that means those deaths and those disorders, high blood pressure, diabetes, different forms of cancer, and of course heart disease and stroke. Alcohol, it's coming in right around fourth in terms of use. And so we would want to also consider moderation in terms, I'm not going to tell anybody just to completely stop drinking unless that's your choice, right? This is all about your choices and how you seek balance. And so we do find that alcohol abuse contributes to the majority of deaths that we have that are alcohol related. And then there's environmental factors. And those environmental factors could be at home, it could be in your community, it could be in the workplace. And so sometimes the environment that we're in has toxins that we are predisposed to that can actually contribute to some of these deaths too. And we might have to change location even to decrease that environmental impact. So this is my list of how do you choose a healthy lifestyle. And you can see the first thing on the list is don't smoke. I'm going to take a sip of my nice green smoothie as I talk about healthy lifestyle. Okay, so if you smoke, quit. If you don't smoke, don't start. And then next thing is sleep. I talk to my students all the time about the importance of sleep. Quality, good, sound sleep for the number of hours that you need. Again, this is individual. You're going to see the recommendation 7 to 8 hours. That recommendation is made so that you will get in that 7 to 8 hours a portion of it in good, sound sleep. That's what gives your body the best rest that will help you have an appropriate functioning immune system. Also to help you with your, when you're thinking about your immune system and your digestive system, they both need that good, solid rest and sleep in order to function well. Well, there's not a blood test, but I'm going to give you some hints, Rena, about how you can start to determine what is the best nutrients to consume. Okay, I don't like the word diet as much. I like to say what nutrients you need to consume. Okay, and so maintaining a healthy body weight, and I did want to speak to this. There are charts for body mass index or BMIs. There are height weight charts, and you can look at all those charts, but I still go back to listen to your body and know how you feel in your body to know what a healthy body weight is. You know when you feel you have too much weight on or you're underweight. You know, because you can feel that. So, you know, you can use the other things as guides, but we're each an individual, and we need to listen to our body, pay attention to how we feel to know what is our best body weight. I know myself what the charts tell me I should be for my body weight, and I can absolutely tell you if I was that body weight, I would not feel well. I need to have a little more weight on me. And I find that my immune system functions more effectively when I have a little more weight on me. That's because I'm listening to my body, and I know the body weight that makes me feel good, where I can still do the thing I want to do. Now, what else for a healthy lifestyle? You got to find a way to move. I say activity or exercise, but you know what? You got to find something you enjoy doing. that you can do really by yourself. It's great if you have someone to do it. So my parents who are in their 80s, I have them walking. They can walk. It helps their mobility. I really don't want my dad running, although sometimes he wants to run, and I don't want him to because he has back problems. But they walk, and they walk together, and I don't think they would walk if they weren't with each other, which is not great, because it's fine to have somebody to do exercise with and feel good about it and be able to reinforce each other. But at some point, you're probably going to need to do that exercise on your own as well. And so you want to find some way to move that you enjoy, that you'll do, and you'll do in the right amount to be able to be active and move for a lifetime. So choose something that you can do for a lifetime. In terms of alcohol, every lifestyle reading is going to say consume little to no alcohol. I say alcohol in moderation, and moderation means probably little. You certainly don't, if you don't want to drink, don't have to drink, but if you want to drink, and I'm talking to college students usually, don't drink in excess. It has very negative consequences in many different ways, and you don't know how acute that may be. And then we get to making good food choices. So you'll not hear me say bad foods and good foods. I'll say good food choices. Some choices are not as good, but nutrient dense, and nutrient dense means not empty calories. And I think you know the things that give us less nutrients. So drinking sodas, even diet drinks, they're not nutrient dense. So be looking at things like, my nice green smoothie here. Very healthy, it's got good nutrients in it, it's hydrating. You're searching for those good food choices, but this is where I come, Rena, specifically for your question. There are things that you eat, and it may satisfy you immediately, or maybe within a certain period of time, but then you might not feel as well from eating it. If you listen to your body, you're going to know those things, those foods that you should avoid. Now, right now, I'm going to tell you the best thing to do is to think about your dietary choices and see the things that you enjoy eating, those things that maybe are not as good a choice. You can still eat it, you just want to eat a little less of it. So I don't eat more than about 4 ounces of meat at a time. I still eat meat occasionally, but I don't eat the larger portion sizes. I limit the portion size, and what I make up in my calories is nutrient-dense plant-based foods. So I add more of those things that I like. And actually, there's a lot of plant-based foods that I can't eat, that I don't feel well and cause an inflammatory response. So I avoid those, and I just eat more of the ones that I do feel good about eating. And so, okay, so in terms of diet drinks, when we first started the Department of Integrative Health Science, we had in our department a nutritionist. She was an RD, and she had her doctorate from Florida State in nutrition, and she's still a very close colleague of mine. She liked diet drinks. I liked regular soda. And both of us would never drink more than one a day. Okay? So, again, we liked it, but we're going to decrease the portion size. So, at some point, we just stopped drinking it altogether. And so every once in a while, I'll have a soda. Every once in a while. And every once in a while, she'll have a diet soda, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I will tell you that drinking any of those in excess can have consequences, and there's a lot more research coming out talking about diet sodas and diabetes. I will also tell you that there are some people who are more sensitive to artificial sweeteners than other people, and I don't know who those are. I can't tell you if you're someone who's more sensitive and may have consequences due to that than someone who is not as sensitive. So this is the way that you can start to think about your choices. Okay, yeah, so maybe you have a good dietary prescription basically in this chat that you just gave. And I would say that if you're doing something right now that you know may not be as healthy for you, cold turkey cutting it out is sometimes very difficult to do, but making gradual changes toward a more healthy lifestyle with nutrition is actually pretty good. I did want to say one more thing about artificial sweeteners. So I've been doing research into the digestive system, the microbiome, and we had quite a few subjects who went through, and we actually do stool culturing and tests to look at if they're dysbiotic. And out of the dysbiotic ones, we then evaluated their diet, and we actually have found research to suggest that the bad bacteria in your microbiome actually loves artificial sweeteners and can lead to dysbiosis. So again, I'm not telling you have to cut it out completely, but there's several different research articles that are saying, depending on your susceptibility as an individual, and again, how do we assess that individually, diet sodas may not be the best case. Having bolus of sugar in a regular soda isn't the best choice either. And it absolutely isn't a good choice. So if you drink one soda at a time, dump it on my diet. Well, again, remember, tapering is great. And tapering actually will make you realize, if you listen to your body, if you feel better. Because you're substituting some of those calories, or actually not the calories, but a less than nutrient-dense beverage with something else. That's basically what I'm saying. So in terms of diets, I think you have to make good choices, and I mean, we all know what those good choices are. More fruits and vegetables. I say more vegetables, more green leafy vegetables is even better. Trying to avoid those snack foods, processed foods. Gosh, get away from the processed foods, which a lot of meats are processed, and that's part of their problem. If you can buy grass-fed meat, I think you will see nuts are a great snack, Raina, and all different types of nuts, but you can't overdo it, and you can be a little tough on your digestive system when you're first going to them. So again, gradual, and look for those nuts that you tolerate well. But in terms of grass-fed beef, you can try this yourself. Again, if you focus and listen to your body, you'll be able to see some of these changes. But we get a lot of inflammatory response from processed foods. And as you know, with COVID, we want to really not be in that inflammatory response because it's stacked. Your immune system is stacked. So if you already have an inflammatory response going on in your gut, you can exacerbate that in the rest of your body when you get exposed to something like COVID, which is increasing inflammation markers. So a regular steak versus a grass-fed beef, I can tell you right now, I can feel the difference in the inflammatory response, and I don't eat that much. I'm only eating about 4 ounces. So we can talk more about nutrition when we get to the question and answer part. Right now, I just want you to really think about the things you're putting in your body, because you really are what you eat. And we have found research article after research article that nutrition can make one of the biggest differences in maintaining a wellness model to decrease the effects that would result in a disease or a pathological condition, as well as supporting the immune system. These plant-based and green leafy vegetables contribute positively to a healthy immune system. So the last one on here is manage your stress, and this is probably the one that I talk about the most. Of course, I'm teaching a lot of college students, and college students, some of them smoke. I can tell them not to smoke. They won't change because I say it. We did go to a smoke-free campus, though. I can tell them to get sleep. They do the best they can, right? But a lot of them actually maintain a pretty healthy body weight. A lot of them are active. I'm not even going to talk about alcohol use in college students, but not all of them drink to excess, although it happens occasionally. And you know what? They actually make some good food choices too. But they do not manage their stress. They get so stressed, and this happens to be one of the ones that gets them into a bad cycle with regard to their immune system. That's what's so difficult to teach them to think about holistic wellness from a stress management point of view. Look at your dimensions, which ones are causing you stress, what are your strategies for addressing that stress? That's what you have to do. I'm probably here to tell you that if you are effective at managing your stress throughout the different dimensions, if you can find a way to stay balanced when it comes to your stressors and have good, healthy strategies, that you will decrease not only your chance or reduce your risk or your chance of getting certain diseases, you will support your immune system and be able to fight infectious diseases. It is no coincidence that students start to get sick when you're giving midterms and finals. They are not getting the sleep, they are not managing their stress, they are all of a sudden not eating well, they're not as active because they're studying, and then, you know, they all start catching something. It's not that they're individually sick, they're sick collectively as a community. They start passing around germs, and it's because they've suppressed their immune system. Stress, when not managed appropriately, suppresses the immune system. It's a physiological fact that it suppresses the immune system. So during this period of time, how do I tell people, you know, yeah, besides the other things that you need to do to reduce your risk of an infectious disease, managing your stress is probably one of the most important. And the wellness model, if you really start to think around the different dimensions, it really is a balancing energy, things that are drawing energy out of you that make you feel less well, and those things that actually seem to energize you, that you get energy from. And all of us are going to have to think about this and have different times when we struggle with it. So yeah, sometimes you're sitting right there with the seesaw and you're perfectly balanced with the things that are drawing energy from you and what you're gaining, and it's wonderful. And then sometimes you feel like the elephant on the beach ball. And it's just very difficult to try and manage the stress in this fashion. So this brings me to the point that what makes you well, it's individual. I can't give you a prescription like the doctor can give you a prescription for some pharmaceutical to try and correct a problem. I can't do that because when it comes to wellness, wellness is individual. And the things that take energy from you and you get energy from is individual. You need to do the work to reflect on it to see how you can maintain balance in these different dimensions. And that brings me to what we're going through right now, the infectious disease. How can we reduce our risk of infectious diseases in general? Okay, now this is outside of sexually transmitted diseases. This is just infectious disease. The same things that we see that contribute to a healthy lifestyle can help us decrease our risk of infectious disease. Yes, you still have to wash your hands and decrease your exposures and possibly wear a mask. I had a student ask me before spring break whether they should wear a mask or not, and my response was, a mask is a barrier. Do what you will with that information. It's a barrier. Just like your skin's a barrier, a mask is a barrier. So besides all those things, what else can we do to reduce our risk for infectious disease? Yeah, eventually we're going to have a vaccination, and we'll do herd immunity to try and address COVID-19. But what can we do in the meantime? We can eat well. We can make good choices. We can try and decrease those foods that cause an inflammatory response. I hate to say it, but dairy is one of those. We can be active. We can find a way to exercise. We can manage our stress. When we have situations like we have now that have emotional consequences that can take a toll on us physiologically due to the stress, it lowers our immune system. We have to find a way to balance those things. We have to find a way to be able to be well even under these circumstances. So that's my list of how to manage a healthy lifestyle in lieu of thinking about the different dimensions that can contribute to the last one, which is the stress. That seems to be the hardest one for people to be able to address. How can I manage my stress? What are my stress management techniques? And are they healthy strategies to deal with stress? Because stress suppresses the immune response and it makes you more susceptible to all sorts of diseases. All right, so I'm gonna turn off the PowerPoint. And I think, Olivia, are we ready for questions and answers?
We are ready for questions.
I don't know if I have the answers, but we're
right. We're gonna find out, right?
Yeah.
You guys can ask away any question in the chat box.
So I did have one other story to tell about exercise, because people usually, so Rena, you were asking about, you know, well, what diet should I do? And a lot of times I get the question about exercise. Well, what kind of exercise should I do? I go back to my parents. My parents are in their 80s. I have them walking, and they walk 3 to 4 times a week, and they walk 2 to 3 miles, and they want to know, well, how fast should we walk? You know, because my dad walks faster than my mom, and I said, walk when it's to the point that it's difficult to carry on a conversation. I don't want them thinking about heart rate. I don't want them doing any of that. That's actually a new research study has come out and said, measure your intensity by that, because it's so easy to do. And we find that that actually is the intensity which can help with stress and reduce risk to disease. Okay, how do I manage my stress? I make lists. That helps me in one dimension, so I can itemize and prioritize things. Sometimes my lists become overwhelming, and then I stop using them because they become stressful. I exercise. I actually walk, but I do a lot of charity work. So actually, Rena and I have been involved in a lot of work recently, but I get great stress relief by my work with dog rescue. So I do a lot of dog rescue, dog transport, and that's my big strategy. I also have one thing that I do emotionally or psychologically, and that is when I'm feeling stressed and I'm like, I need to get this done, I need to get this done, I take a step back and I go, maybe I don't need to get all of this done or that particular thing done because I'm not feeling balanced and I'm not feeling well. Maybe I should take a step back. So, how accurate or useful are serving sizes? Okay, hi Precious. I know Precious and I have cats, I've talked kittens and dogs. We actually rescued a kitten together. Serving sizes. You know, serving sizes have a lot to do with and Monster's doing great, Precious, just to let you know. They have a lot to do with your body size as well. It really, I go back to serving sizes as you know what you can put on your plate and the number of calories that you can have. I do think there is quite a lot of people who are eating too much. And so I do tell people to pay attention to their portion size, and that sometimes people think they're eating one serving of something and they're not. If you want to eat multiple servings of plant-based fruits and vegetables, it's okay to overdo it on those, but I think you need to watch the serving size of processed foods, of your dairy, of your oils, and of your meat. So I think when you're talking about how accurate or useful, it's good for those things, and it's not as bad for the other ones because you can eat more of those. Ashley's in here, another sorority sister. Oh, you want to know more about dairy? I think, wait, I had another question. Olivia, did you see the question right before the dairy question?
Yes, Rena's asking if probiotics are effective.
Oh, okay. I think you need to know which probiotic to take. So when I'm talking probiotics, you almost need to do a stool culture and sample to see what are the strains of bacteria that you have. Are you dysbiotic? Because a lot of times what they're selling you over the counter, that may be the bacterial strain that you happen to already have enough of. And so if you're just taking a probiotic that already has primarily the strain that is already in your gut, you're not helping yourself with a probiotic. So I will recommend, though, if you're having a digestive issues, that you should consider, whoops, something's going on Rena's feed. Olivia or Alex, you got anything on that? I lost the chat box. Okay, so a probiotic, you need to have a multi-strain one, and you can take it for a while and you can see if it makes a difference. There are prebiotics too. Prebiotics are the dietary supplement that feeds the good bacteria in your gut. Sometimes people need a prebiotic, okay? So, but you know, the only way I can answer that question is by doing a stool sample and really looking at the strains of your bacteria. That's the best way to do it. Now, dairy actually, just like the artificial sweeteners, gosh, the bad bacteria in your gut love dairy. So you need to limit your dairy. Not all dairy is bad by any means. You really do need to limit the dairy. So for some of us, dairy contributes to an inflammatory response. And so you need to know within your body if you're one of those people. Because that can then lead, when you have an inflammatory, I'm trying to make this simplistic, but if you have an inflammatory response in your gut, you can actually start to lead to some leaky gut. People are different in how they can handle dairy, but I tell people, if you eat dairy and you start to feel foggy brained, if you know you're probably a person that shouldn't be eating dairy. And if you feel bloated, if you feel like you're having an inflammatory response, if you're running to the bathroom or anything, that's probably contributing to the bad bacteria. It's probably feeding the bad bacteria in your gut. Again, a very simplistic one. Ashley, I love your question. How did FIMU football inform your wellness thing? Ashley saying that because FIMU was, I think we won the championship in football. And so we were just awesome. But you know what? The best thing about FIMU football is that, and our sorority, is that we were a group of people who really knew how to enjoy each other's company and contribute positively to the social dimension. And if you're in a group of people that's not working for you, you need to change that group of people. You need to change how that group of people is oriented and how it affects you. So certainly me being in the sorority and having a couple of my sorority sisters in the room today is wonderful. We actually had a very wonderful group of people that contributed positively to that social dimension. And the football was great. So I can't even remember what position I played. I know I ran a lot, but okay, what's bad about oils? Well, it's quantity of oils and what type of oil that you're using. There's really nothing substantially bad about using a little olive oil or extra virgin olive oil when in your cooking. There's nothing wrong with that. But using a lot of oils to fry your food, now there's something wrong with oils and how you're changing the consistency of that oil. So that would be my remark, basically, in a generalized way for oils. If you had something more specific, I could probably address that. Now, Olivia, I don't see anything else in the chat box.
So all the way down at the bottom, we have a couple more questions. One from Debbie Monaco. Would my primary care doctor be able to provide testing for the probiotics?
Okay, your primary care, you could ask them, but without a diagnosis, okay, sometimes you're going to get charged for it. There are independent testing places that will do this as well. And so if you go to your primary care and you're saying, well, you know, I'd like to have the bacterial strains analyzed, they can do a script for that, and you have to do a stool sample. But there's actually plenty of places, independent places, that you could pay also, do your own stool sample, you mail it off, and they analyze it and they give you back a complete report. So it just depends on, which way you want to finance it. What else do we have? I know we're running low on time.
Yeah, Meg Young said, my nutritionist suggested that you should not eat 30 minutes before or after eating. Do you agree with this? And is it helpful for digestion and weight?
Okay, wait. I'm not sure I understand. Suggested you should not eat 30 minutes before or after eating? Is that what you meant, Meg? Eating or exercising? Wait. Okay, wait. Let me see if I understand. Suggested that you should not eat 30 minutes before or after drinking or drink? Oh, I have lots of thoughts on essential oils. Let me get back to that. I'm still, do you agree? I'm still not sure I understand. You should not drink. Okay, so if this is eating 30 minutes before or after, do you agree with this and think it's helpful for digestion and weight? Wow, that's a complicated question. I'm not sure I agree with your nutritionist on this one. But I will say, if you have a specific nutritionist, she may know you individually better than I do. But we can talk more about that, Meg, at some point if you want to get together and go out and have a drink. Okay, I have a sweet tooth. Refined sugar is not, it can contribute to an inflammatory response, but actually it contributes to bolusing of glucose, which then can beat up your arteries. So again, we can have the refined sugar. We just don't need to bolus it, give you a high concentration of it in your bloodstream to make your insulin spike, and then trying to bring it down from there. That can contribute to diabetes. That's why we say no refined sugar drinks. The high fructose corn syrup, that boluses glucose. And so that's when you don't want to have that kind of refined sugar. There are lots of things for people who have sweet tooth that doesn't involve refined sugar or high fructose corn syrup. There are other things, other substitutions, but you have to find which ones those are that make you, that satisfy you. So milk replacements. Okay, so since I don't do a lot of dairy, I like all of these. I don't drink much soy. I don't know why, but I've never really preferred the soy. There are some ramifications with regard to too much soy in certain age groups and certain susceptibilities, but I think almond and the oat milks, cashew milk, I drink that. Those are all good choices. My kids don't like it, but they don't drink milk at all anymore. So, but I think these are good replacements. You just have to make sure that you are finding ways to make sure you maintain calcium, and probably vitamin D is more important than calcium now, because if you don't have the vitamin D, you're not absorbing the calcium. So that's what I would say. Those are all good choices. Okay, gluten. Oh, there's lots of controversy about gluten. There are certainly people, remember we were talking about that wellness is very individual, and so there are people who have susceptibilities where an inflammatory response is caused by gluten, and they should be reducing gluten or avoiding it. But that doesn't fit for everyone. That is not a model that fits for everyone. And so if you are someone who is sensitive to gluten, you'll actually know. And then you want to avoid it. But if you're a person that's not sensitive, again, taking everything in moderation, right, and not, taking in too much, I don't see any reason, if you don't have that susceptibility, to include gluten in your diet. Let's see. Oh, suggestions with helping indigestion. That goes back to sources of indigestion. I'm not sure why you have it. So I would need to, a lot of times indigestion, there are so many reasons that people can have indigestion. So I wouldn't know exactly which one to tell you to do or what to tell you to do exactly. I'd have to look at a dietary recall and have you do some tracking. Bye, Morgan. Thanks for joining me. Yeah, so other things for people with sweet tooths. Fruit's the way to go for the sweet tooth. You can do some juices, and yeah, when you say cherries are good. Don't go overboard on cherries though, because cherries can be really rough on your digestive system. Oh yeah, honey or agave, you can use that. Okay, wait, if I'm going to play some high performance sports like tennis, what would be good foods to eat before and after, and how long before playing should I eat? Wow, that's quite a complicated question. I need to know the length of your tennis matches. And then in terms of portion sizes. So when you get into sports nutrition, this is highly prescriptive for sport nutrition. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that one right now. That's gonna take me a while to answer. But I will tell you. Let's see. Do we have any contact information for, like, if somebody wants to send me an email or something?
Yes, I have your bio slide, which has your email on it. I'm going to go ahead and post it up on the screen.
Yeah, because I could answer some of these. Is it on there?
At the top, right next to your name.
So there's my email. If you want to email me and ask that question, I can get back to you. I am not a sport nutritionist. I do have some friends that are, and I can certainly get you some free information on that. And thank you all for joining us today.